today is facing poverty. Poverty and injustice are the consequences, the result of human action and inaction. We think if we work together, if we refuse to accept an unequal world and hold decision makers accountable, responsible, we are hopeful that a radically better world is possible. Climate change has affected all immensely. The global crisis has drawn our attentions, and our presence today is fully central for collective climate action, which is very urgent to the present world. In the context of Nepal, despite its negligible contributions to the climate change, Nepal is one of the most vulnerable countries that bears its disproportionate burden. And Nepal faces this menace in the form of global warming, rising temperatures, melting glaciers, frequent and intense rainfall, flooding and landslides affecting the lives and livelihoods of our people and planet. Women and children are more victimized in this context. Few days ago, I was in Taiyuan, just taking part in one of the very important forum, international forum, organized by the Shaanxi provincial government. The vice president of the Kiribati was there. He told that his country is just 3 meters above the sea level. If the climate change goes like this and the melting of the glaciers goes on continuously, and if we are not cautious about this issue, perhaps after some decades, the country Kiribati will have to lose its identity. It will be drowned. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very crucial issue for all human beings, for all of us, to act very quickly and to be very, very careful on this issue. Nepal remains firmly committed to implementation of the Paris Agreement, which is evident in its ambitious nationally determined contribution that aim for net zero emission by 2045. I believe today we will be having a fruitful discussion on climate challenges in Nepal, along with the suggestions and solutions. We have Madam Zhou Guomei, Director General of Ministry of Ecology and Environment of China, from whom we want to hear the Chinese priority to fight climate crisis. Friends, you know China is now being the leading country for a green economy, and I do hope that we will get a lot of information and knowledge from her.
Ms. Zhou Guomei, Director General of the Department of International Cooperation from the Ministry of Ecology and Environment of China.
It is my great pleasure to join today's event organized by the Embassy of Nepal in China and exchange opinions on climate change cooperation with you. First of all, on behalf of the Ministry of Ecology and the Environment of China, I would like to extend sincere congratulations to the convening of the event. You know, today's topic is very hot, very important. Climate change is a severe challenge facing all human beings. The only way for effective response to this challenge is that all parties should work together with unity and concerted efforts from the need of entire humanity and that for self-development. The Chinese government is actively addressing climate change issue with a highly responsible attitude. It places climate change in a more prominent position on the agenda of national governance and maximize its efforts to promote the comprehensive green transition of economic and social development and to develop the modernization of harmony between humanity and nature. You know, in 2020, China put forward the goals to strive to peak carbon dioxide emission before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality before 2060, and updated our NDC, the nationally determined contributions. And in October 2021, China submitted China's achievement, new goals, and new measures for NDC and China's mid-century long-term low greenhouse gas emission development strategy to the Secretary of the UNFCCC. At present, China has completed the policy framework, the establishment of a 1+N policy system for carbon peaking and carbon neutrality. And China persists on mutual emphasis on mitigation and adaptation, and released the National Climate Change Adaptation Strategy 2035. The work on climate change adaptation continues to deepen. So, from 2012 to 2021, China's carbon dioxide emission per unit of GDP decreased by almost 35%. And the trend of rapid growth in carbon dioxide emissions was reversed. By the end of 2022, the installed capacity of renewable energy reached 1.2 billion kilowatts. That is very significant, already exceeding that of coal power for the first time. The share of the clean energy in total energy consumption surpassed 25%. And in the street you can see a lot of new energy vehicles. Here I have a number. The number of new energy vehicles in China reached 13 million, account for more than 50% of the world total. And the sales volume of the new energy vehicles ranked first in the world for 8 years. China has successfully launched the national carbon market, which holds the largest amount of greenhouse gas emissions worldwide, giving effective play to the role of market mechanism in controlling greenhouse gas emissions and promoting green and low carbon transition. In July, this year, July, China had a very important conference we call China's National Conference on Ecological and Environmental Protection. President Xi Jinping attended this important conference and made a very important speech. It was another announcement to the world which displays China's full determination in pursuing the development path of ecological civilization, which is featured as well-developed production, wealthy life of the people, and good ecology. And for the climate change issue, actually we have highlighted 6 major tasks, and actively and steadily promote progress towards carbon peaking and carbon neutrality is among the 6 major tasks set out by the conference. While making sound efforts domestically, China has been actively engaging in global climate governance. Over the years, China has worked with developing countries to promote the joint observation of principles of equity, common but differentiated responsibility and respective capabilities, and the principles of being open, transparent, inclusive, party-driven, and consensus-based. China has played a leading role in and the process ahead with the process of global climate governance and facilitated adoption, signing, taking effect, and the implementation of the Paris Agreement. China continues to enhance South-South cooperation on climate change and do its best to help other developing countries to improve capacities for addressing climate change. As for August 2023, China has signed 46 documents for South-South cooperation on climate change with 39 developing countries and help them enhance capabilities for climate change response through developing low-carbon demonstration zones, providing goods and facilities for climate building capacities, and so on. Dear friends, just as mentioned by His Excellency Ambassador, Nepal is highly sensitive to climate change due to geographical and climate reasons. Severe weather, such as floods, landslides, and droughts, adversely affect livelihoods and lifestyles of Nepal. Nepal and China are very friendly neighbors, linked by mountains and rivers. In the field of climate change, we share extensive common interests and proposals, and have long-term cooperation. China is ready to actively implement the Global Development Initiative and continue the practical exchange and cooperations on climate change with Nepal and also other developing countries. Further strengthen communication and exchanges in the multilateral progress on climate, enhance mutual understanding, and jointly safeguard multilateralism to contribute more positive energy to the enhanced, comprehensive, and effective implementation of UNFCCC and its Paris Agreement. Jointly call on the international community, especially developed countries, to honor their commitment, pay attention to the concerns of developing countries, and provide them with adequate climate finance. And second, make good use of cooperation platforms such as the BRI, International Green Development Coalition, to share experiences in addressing climate change and strengthen capacity building. As you know, China will host the third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation, and the Ministry of Ecology and Environment will organize a high-level meeting on green development for this forum. We welcome colleagues from Nepal, from the international communities, to pay attention and participate in these relevant activities of the forum. And third, China is still serving as the presidency of COP15. That is the conference of the parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity. You know, last December in Montreal, the parties, the COP15s, have successfully approved the GBF, Global Biodiversity Framework, which paves the pathway for the whole world, for the global, to dealing with, to protect the biodiversity. China looks forward to the joint efforts of all parties in promoting synergy governance for addressing climate change and conserving biodiversity. You know, the biodiversity, climate change issue are very close linked. So we seek the synergy between the different multilateral conventions, as well as the implementation of important outcomes, such as I mentioned Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And lastly, but not least, explore knowledge sharing and cooperation in areas of mutual interest and common concern, such as climate monitoring, early warning system, sustainable agriculture, renewable energy, and climate resilient cities. So I hope that today's event we can, around these hot topics, look forward to the fruitful discussion from the international community, from the NGO, from the researchers, to give us insights to dealing with climate change issue. I believe that through the joint efforts and the cooperation of colleagues from both countries, China and Nepal cooperation on climate change and the ecological environment will make greater progress and make more positive contributions to climate change response in the two countries and worldwide. It will also contribute to the progress in building a clean and beautiful world. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
May I have the honor to call upon His Excellency Mr. Siddhartha Chatterjee, United Nations Resident Coordinator, for his remark.
We are at the cusp of an existentialist crisis. It's as clear as that. We are seeing what is called the triple planetary crisis. We have a crisis of air pollution, we have a crisis of the climate, and we have a crisis of biodiversity loss. A universal phenomenon. We saw the impact of Hurricane Ian in Florida, and we've seen the kind of floods that have arrived in Beijing, which is unheard of. The summer temperatures that we've experienced this year across the world has been huge. Last year, the forest fires in California and the forest fires in Chongqing took everybody by surprise. But this is now gradually becoming the new normal. So nobody is immune to this reality. Climate change, the climate crisis is upon us. It's man-made, and we have the choice. We have the big data, we have the technological prowess, and we have the innovation to end it. Let me start by mentioning a visit I did with the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations to Inner Mongolia, to a place called Kubuchi. In my 25 years in the United Nations system, I have never seen a project of this scale where combating desertification is not just a buzzword, but has turned into reality. A desert where there were nomadic communities living impoverished lives, pastures, have completely transformed into an oasis of renewable energy, of agribusiness, of livestock. It's just incredible. And it's also perhaps the best example of how public-private partnerships work, how political, how the right public policies, how the right partnerships work. In fact, I would very much encourage the Nepalese delegation to just go and visit this particular place at a point in time, as I'm doing with many of the member states who are grappling with issues of this sort. Historically, there used to be a lot of the sandstorms that used to come out from Inner Mongolia into Beijing. That has stopped. Now the sandstorms come from Mongolia, and that is why there is this big plan of doing an afforestation program there. But what this Kubuchi model actually goes to show is that, being the 7th largest desert, it is actually producing 3.2 gigawatts of electricity through its solar power over there. It is actually providing electricity to the national grid and is able to make money out of providing electricity to the national grid through renewable energy sources. So it is not just an effort of combating desertification, but what it has also proved, this model, is that it is actually possible to turn the green economy, low carbon development, into a profitable enterprise. and it is extremely profitable. Nepal has a tiny 0.00001% signature on carbon emissions. And yet today, Nepal is seeing the scourge of landslides, flash floods, droughts, leave alone the fact that it sits on tectonic plates, so the constant threat of earthquakes. So it is clear that countries like Nepal across the world, and as the ambassador mentioned, Kiribati, are at great risk. In fact, humanity is at risk. Our existence is at risk. And that is why the Secretary General has said the period of global warming is over. The period of global boiling has arrived. So I want to take this opportunity, first of all, commend the government of Nepal for setting up this very ambitious plan of achieving net zero by 2045. But even with those efforts, if the surrounding areas, if the planet does not move towards achieving net zero, it's not going to help Nepal. We realize there's geopolitics. We have to insulate geopolitics from this. This is an existentialist threat that affects everybody. Therefore, we will need the concerted effort, and particularly I want to take this opportunity to commend the government of China for the leadership it is providing. I think the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Treaty is a good one. It provides us, it perhaps is the Paris moment of biodiversity. And we have seen, I mean, I travel this country, we've seen the transformational change that it has made. Yes, the fact of the matter is I do half marathons at a weekly basis. I need clean air to run in. Most weeks I'm actually running in Beijing because the air is clean and there's no problem with pollution. So if a country with 1.4 billion people can do it, why can't anybody else? That's the issue. But there is an equitable responsibility that has to be shared. Today the G20 countries are responsible for 80% of the carbon emissions. And they talked about investing in climate mitigation and putting in $100 billion. Never happened. Last year with COP27 there was hope that with the loss and damage fund there would be resources put in. Nothing's happened. That is why we need leadership here. The transformation that you're seeing, that we are witnessing, we as the United Nations are witnessing in China over the last 40 years, 45 years that we've been here, has been dramatic. I believe it is that leadership that we will require across the spectrum. And that is why the Secretary General is now convening this meeting in New York. And Nepal's voice must be heard loudly and clearly, unequivocally, calling to action the leadership of the G20 countries to take action now. So I see incredible opportunities of once again resurrecting the spirit of multilateralism, because this needs all of us coming together. I want to commend the efforts of Oxfam, an NGO of great standing, for what it is doing to be supporting efforts in Nepal, supporting cross-border efforts. And therefore we will need an all-of-society approach, all-of-government approach, all of society and the private sector coming together, because this affects everybody. The private sector is not immune to those realities of climate change. They are people who have children, who are going to the same schools, living in the same environment. But what finally will matter, the transformation we've seen in China has been because of the strong political will. That is precisely that people need. Strong political will towards more climate financing, and the reality is that just like the pandemic, we are all in this together. So once again, I want to commend the government of Nepal and particularly the ambassador for this important initiative as we head towards the climate summit this month and to the COP28. And you can count on, Excellency, the full support of the United Nations system. We will continue to work with China to promote more South-South cooperation, more South-South learning, more best practices that we can share from this country. China has a lot to share, a lot to share.
Thank you, Excellency, for a very insightful remark and also shedding light on the upcoming climate summit as well as the COP28, and very well said that it is an equitable responsibility as we are all in this together. So after this, may I have the honor to call up Ms.Smriti Aryal, representative of UN Women China Office, for her statement.
On behalf of UN Women, please allow me to sincerely thank the Embassy of Nepal and Oxfam in Beijing for organizing this roundtable and inviting UN Women to participate and say a few important words for this meaningful event. As we have already heard, climate change is one of the greatest global challenges we are facing. It poses threats to all human beings, of course, to the environment we live in. And I will today talk a little bit more about the people, because we've heard a lot about the environment and the impact as a whole. The poorest and the most vulnerable nations, as we've heard, and people there within will be hurt the most because of the climate change impact. Nepal, like most countries around the world, also faces the impact of climate change, and I will not repeat what has been said by Sid and also by the Excellency already. What I really want to say is that, though, these impacts are not gender neutral. And I work for UN Women. UN Women's agenda is to advance women's rights, gender equality, women's empowerment everywhere. So we all know the impact change has impacted men, women, boys, girls, people in diversity. As I've said, they have differential impact, and today I want to talk about how it impacts women and girls more. So to tell you a few statistics you may be aware, women are 14 times more likely to die than men in disasters. I'm not sure how many of you know why. This is in context sometimes when there is a flood, for example, women simply do not know how to swim. This is what happened in Myanmar in 2008. And why do women not know how to swim? It's because they've never been taught, because swimming is not something it's seen as traditionally exposing your body. It's not seen as something it is important, a life-saving skill.